So Aaron Freeman here of Locked On Falcons, joined by Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. Talk keys to victory on a crossover Thursday episode, both Locked On Falcons and Locked On Steelers. And that is, of course, presented by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So talking keys to victory, Chris, what are like the three most important things for the Steelers to do in order to walk away from week one with a win?
For one, the Steelers have to take away Bijan Robinson, who I think is a major part of this Falcons offense if they want to make it work this year. Kyle Pitts is certainly a threat. Drake London's certainly a threat. But if they can take away Bijan Robinson and force Kirk Cousins to be one-dimensional in this game, and I know that sounds very boring to people who listen to keys to the game, but that is very much who the Steelers are. The Steelers are not some new age team that's coming at you and trying to say, oh, if we take this over here, the passing game is going to work. No, they are very much old school. Stuff the run so they can rush the quarterback. That is their plan. So if Bijan Robinson is getting loose, guess what? Steelers are in trouble because that's the whole crux of their defense. But their defensive front has been relied upon, has been invested into, and they're relying upon this year to be much better than it was last year. Cam Hayward was hurt all last year. Larry Ogunjobi was hurt all last year. They were down to practice squad linebackers for most of last year. This year, they've gotten a whole new crew of guys, and both Ogunjobi and Hayward seem very healthy going into the early part of this year. They're much more confident stuff in the run. So I think that's key number one. Stuff Bijan Robinson, get after that. Number two is, I wouldn't say win the line of scrimmage, neutralize the line of scrimmage on offense. Make it about Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and the Steelers playmakers out of the backfield. You do that, it allows the Steelers on offense to do what they hope to limit the Falcons from doing, and that's have a balanced attack. They're not going to ask Russell Wilson to throw 50 times in this game unless they're down by a lot of points. They're asking Russell Wilson to say, hey, throw 25 to 30 times, and don't have most of them have to be from 2nd and 8, because they're hoping that the Steelers run game can at least get 3, 4, 5 yards on first downs most of the time, and then set up 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, getting more of those situations so Russell Wilson can take advantage of more of those spots, move the sticks on most occasions, maybe make big plays on some of those occasions. Those are those things that I think the Steelers are looking for at the line of scrimmage. And those are very basic things, but I think that's certainly a part of it. But part of it for me also, and this is my third big key, is getting Kirk Cousins to make mistakes. Now, the last 2 times the Steelers have played Kirk Cousins, they have forced him to throw 2 interceptions both of those occasions. One of those games they won because they were able to dominate the rest of the field, and they were able to, when he was with what are the Commanders now, used to be a different team in Washington. They dominated that game, got him to throw 2 picks, and that was how they won that game. The last time they played, though, was when he was with the Minnesota Vikings, and he threw 2 interceptions then. But the difference was they allowed Dalvin Cook to run for 200 yards and get 2 touchdowns. That is why, again, they can't allow Bijan Robinson to do that. So if they stop Bijan Robinson, they still have to be the turnover demons that they expect to be this year with being a top defense. So that's why that's my third key. Key 1, stop the run. Key 2, neutralize the line of scrimmage enough so that Najee Harris and the run game can be solid. And it's about the playmakers, less about the offensive line. And then, of course, when you force Kirk Cousins to be one-dimensional, make him pay and create the turnovers.
Yeah, I think those are all great keys to victory for the Steelers. And, a couple of those mirror kind of what I think the keys to victory for the Falcons. 1, I think, is stopping the run. 2, keep Kirk upright. And 3, generate some explosive plays. Talking about stopping the run, yeah, it is basic, but football is a pretty basic sport. And, we know Arthur Smith from his days in Atlanta, he tends to be a little bit conservative with his play call. He's going to run the ball on early downs. You want to make Pittsburgh one-dimensional. As you said, Russell Wilson does, the goal is not to have Russell Wilson drop back and throw the ball 40, 50 times. And if you're the Falcons, you want Pittsburgh to play that way because that's playing left-handed from their perspective. And if you can get those stops on early downs, put them in some 3rd and longs, hopefully this Falcons pass rush with Matthew Judon, Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata can take advantage of maybe some of the question marks that the Steelers have up front on their offensive line. And it's kind of the opposite thing with keeping Kirk upright, right? The biggest strength of the Steelers, we just talked about it, is their front, right? That's got to be neutralized or contained. J.J. Watt is going to get doubled and chipped, but that's going to lead to a lot of one-on-ones for the other Steelers rushers. And as Chris broke down earlier, those other guys know how to eat when it is served to them. And there's been a lot of hype for the Falcons offensive line. And to me, they have to go out there and prove that they can hold up against this Steelers front. And then that third thing, generating explosive plays. The Steelers gave up the second least number of 10-plus yard scoring drives last season, right? Matriculating the ball down the field against them is not going to work. I'll tell you that. But getting explosive plays, they did give up a lot of explosive plays last year. You saw that in that Rams game last year, where a lot of those came from Puka Nacua, and the player that the Falcons are expecting to kind of fill the Puka Nacua role in this Falcons offense this year is Drake London. So if they can get him going, the offensive line can keep Kirk upright, get him the time to find Drake London on those crossers and those dig routes and all those things that Zach Robinson is going to port over from his days in LA. That can be a big part, and that's going to allow the Falcons to score enough points so that it's going to make the Steelers play from behind, which is the way that they don't want to play. They want to have that lead and pound the rock. So I think those are kind of the three keys to victory. As you said, they're boring. We'll probably be repeating a bunch of these in the upcoming weeks throughout the season, but that's just kind of how football is. You just got to do the basic fundamental things. And if you do those things effectively, you will be put in a position to win football games.
And again, I think this paints the parallel picture between these two teams right now. Whereas, yes, the head coaches are old and young, but you look at new quarterbacks, you look at teams that are trying to win with these new quarterbacks in the ways that specialize to how the rest of their personnel lines up. It adds up to me to be teams that are trying to win in very classic ways of football because they don't have the supreme superstar quarterbacks. But I also think that there's teams that have shown you don't need the supreme superstar quarterbacks to be really good in this league. Look at the Lions last year with Jared Goff. There's team. Look at the Niners with Brock Purdy. You don't necessarily need now. Certainly, having Patrick Mahomes doesn't hurt, right? like no one's saying that you can just win the Super Bowl without a quarterback. But there are ways to be among the best teams in the NFL when you don't have one. And that's where both of these teams are trying to achieve. I think it'll be a battle of wills to see who achieves it the best Sunday, 1:00 in Atlanta.
Absolutely. And the Steelers have dominated that will competition over the, almost 60 years that they've been playing the Falcons. I think this is the most lopsided matchup probably in NFL history for teams that have existed for as long as these two teams, where the Steelers are 15-2-1 against the Falcons all time. So I'm hoping maybe we'll get a third win from the Falcons in not in my lifetime, the second one in my lifetime, but a third one in probably anybody else's on the planet's lifetime. So we'll see if the Falcons can do the impossible, which historically has been beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, or if the Pittsburgh Steelers will continue to dominate this matchup and Mike Tomlin can go to his former protege and Raheem Morris and say, the master is still the master and the student hasn't become quite the master.